The cold bit into Olivia Harrington's skin like the teeth of a hungry wolf as she scrambled through the snow, her breath coming in ragged clouds before her face. Behind her, the shouts of angry men echoed through the towering pines of the Colorado wilderness. The year was 1878, and Olivia was running for her life, leaving behind everything she had ever known. "There she is," a voice bellowed through the trees. "Don't let that thieving harlot escape." Olivia pushed harder, her dress heavy with snow and ice, her boots slipping on the treacherous terrain. The accusations they hurled at her were false, but truth mattered little in a town that had already decided her guilt. She had been labeled a thief, a liar, and worse all because she'd rejected the advances of the town's most powerful man. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the forest in a suffocating white shroud. Olivia's lungs burned with each desperate breath as she plunged deeper into the wilderness. She'd fled Silverton with nothing but the clothes on her back and her mother's locket around her neck. The mountains had seemed like salvation when she'd first entered their embrace, but now they felt like a tomb closing around her. Night was descending rapidly, bringing with it a biting wind that cut through her woolen dress like it was nothing more than tissue paper. The voices behind her had faded, but the danger remained. Winter in the Rockies showed no mercy to unprepared travelers, and Olivia was as unprepared as one could be. As darkness claimed the forest, Olivia stumbled into a small clearing. Her legs, numb from cold and exhaustion, finally gave way beneath her. She collapsed into the snow, tears freezing on her cheeks before they could fall. The shame of her situation burned inside her chest, the only warmth she felt as the cold embraced her body. She had been respected once, the schoolteacher in a growing mining town. Now she was nothing but a fugitive, fleeing from lies that had spread like wildfire. "I just need to rest," she whispered to herself, knowing it was the most dangerous thought she could entertain. "Just a moment." The snow continued to fall, gentle and unceasing, covering her like a blanket, a deceptively peaceful shroud. As consciousness began to slip away, Olivia's thoughts turned to her parents, long buried in the town cemetery. Would she join them now? Perhaps it was fitting. The shame that had driven her into these mountains would be buried with her beneath the silent snow. Miles away, Nathan Xavier urged his horse through the blizzard, cursing the foolishness that had led him to travel in such conditions. He had spent the past 5 years driving cattle from Texas to various territories, and he knew better than to challenge Mother Nature when she was in a fury. But the promise of work at the Anderson Ranch had drawn him northward, even as winter descended on the mountains. "Come on, Brutus," he encouraged his horse, patting its neck. "Just a little further. We'll find shelter soon." Nathan pulled his scarf tighter around his face, the material stiff with ice. The snow was falling so heavily now that he could barely see more than a few feet ahead. The trail had disappeared hours ago, leaving him to navigate by instinct and the vague shape of the mountains around him. As Brutus trudged forward, something caught Nathan's eye, a splash of dark color against the endless white. He pulled his horse to a halt and squinted through the swirling snow. "What in tarnation?" he muttered, dismounting with a grunt. Drawing closer, his heart nearly stopped. It was a woman, nearly covered by snow, her dark hair fanned out around her pale face like a halo. For a terrible moment, Nathan thought he had stumbled upon a corpse. Then he saw the faint cloud of breath escaping her blue-tinged lips. "Madam." He dropped to his knees beside her, brushing snow from her face. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Nathan quickly assessed the situation. She was dressed for town, not wilderness, no heavy coat, no proper boots for this weather. What was she doing out here alone? There was no time for questions. The woman would die if she remained in the snow much longer. With decisive movements, Nathan began to dig, removing the snow that had accumulated around her body. The wind howled around them as he worked, his gloved hands moving as quickly as they could. When he had cleared enough snow, he carefully slid his arms beneath her and lifted. She was lighter than he expected, her body limp in his arms. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel how cold she was even through his heavy coat. "You're not dying tonight," he whispered fiercely, the words torn away by the wind almost as soon as they left his mouth. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Nathan carried her to Brutus, who stood patiently in the storm. With some difficulty, he managed to get the unconscious woman settled in the saddle before mounting behind her. He wrapped one arm securely around her waist, holding the reins with his free hand. "We need shelter, boy," he told the horse, "and fast." Brutus seemed to understand the urgency, picking his way forward with renewed determination. Nathan kept the woman pulled tight against him, trying to share what warmth he could. Her head rested against his shoulder, and he found himself speaking to her as they rode, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Hang on, madam. Just hang on a little longer." The blizzard intensified, but fortune smiled upon them when Nathan spotted a dark shape looming ahead a small cabin, almost hidden in the trees. It appeared abandoned, its windows dark, but it would provide shelter from the relentless storm. Reaching the cabin, Nathan dismounted carefully, cradling the woman against his chest. He kicked at the door, which swung open with a groan of protest. The interior was dark and cold but blessedly dry. "Thank the Lord," he muttered, carrying the woman inside. The cabin was sparsely furnished, a small table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed against one wall, and a stone fireplace that promised warmth if he could get a fire started. Nathan laid the woman on the bed and quickly set about the task of building a fire, finding some old logs stacked beside the hearth and kindling in a small box. Once the fire was crackling in the grate, he returned his attention to the woman. She hadn't moved, her face as pale as the snow outside. Nathan knew enough about surviving in the wilderness to recognize the signs of severe cold exposure. He needed to warm her, and quickly. He removed his damp coat and gloves, then hesitated. What he needed to do next went against everything he'd been taught about propriety, but hypothermia didn't care about social niceties. With a silent apology, Nathan began to remove the woman's wet clothing, replacing it with a blanket he'd found folded at the foot of the bed. Once she was wrapped in the blanket, he added his own dry coat on top and moved her closer to the fire. Her skin remained frighteningly cold to the touch. Nathan rubbed her hands between his, trying to encourage circulation. "Come on," he urged softly. "Fight, madam. You've made it this far." As the cabin slowly warmed, Nathan attended to Brutus, bringing the horse around to a small lean-to attached to the cabin side. He removed the saddle and rubbed the animal down with a horse blanket from his supplies, making sure his loyal companion was settled before returning to the woman. To his relief, some color had begun to return to her cheeks, though she remained unconscious. Nathan added more wood to the fire and settled into a chair beside the bed, prepared for a long night. "Who are you?" he wondered aloud, studying her face in the firelight. She was beautiful, with delicate features and long dark lashes that cast shadows on her cheeks. She seemed young, perhaps in her mid-20s. What circumstances had driven her into the mountains during a blizzard hours past? Nathan dozed intermittently, always jerking awake to check on his charge and add wood to the fire. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind howling around the cabin like a pack of wolves. It was nearly dawn when the woman stirred. A soft moan escaped her lips, drawing Nathan immediately to her side. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened, revealing eyes the color of warm honey. Confusion clouded them as she took in her surroundings. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You're safe," Nathan said, keeping his voice gentle. "I found you in the snow. You're in a cabin now, out of the storm." Fear flashed across her face and she tried to sit up, only to fall back with a groan. "Easy," Nathan cautioned. "You nearly froze to death. Your body needs time to recover." She stared at him, suspicion clear in her gaze. "Who are you?" "Name's Nathan Xavier. I'm a drover heading to work at the Anderson Ranch." He offered a small smile. "And you are—" She hesitated, as if weighing whether to tell him the truth. "Olivia," she finally said. "Olivia Harrington." "Miss Harrington, it's a pleasure to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances." Nathan reached for a cup of water he'd set nearby. "Can you drink?" He helped her sit up slightly, supporting her back as she took small sips. When she'd had enough, he eased her back down. "Thank you," Olivia said, her voice stronger now, "for saving my life. Any decent man would have done the same." Nathan returned to his chair. "If you don't mind my asking, what were you doing out in that blizzard all alone?" Olivia turned her face away, staring into the flames dancing in the fireplace. "I was running." "Running? From what?" "From lies. From men who believe they can take whatever they want." Her voice hardened. "From a town that decided I was guilty without hearing my side." Nathan didn't press further, recognizing the pain behind her words. Whatever had happened to Olivia Harrington, it had driven her to risk death rather than stay and face it. "You're safe here," he said simply. "At least until the storm passes. Then we can figure out what comes next." Olivia turned back to him, studying his face as if searching for deceit. Finding none, she nodded slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier. Nathan, please." "Nathan." A ghost of a smile touched her lips before exhaustion claimed her again, her eyes drifting closed. Nathan watched her for a moment before rising to check on Brutus and gather more firewood. The storm showed no signs of abating, which meant they would be confined to the cabin for at least another day, possibly longer. They would need food soon. He had some jerky and hardtack in his saddlebags, but it wouldn't last long. As he stepped outside into the howling wind, Nathan couldn't help but wonder what twist of fate had led him to that specific clearing at that specific moment. Had he arrived even an hour later, he would have found a corpse instead of a woman clinging to life. He didn't consider himself a particularly religious man, but even he had to acknowledge the hand of Providence in their meeting. Whatever had driven Olivia Harrington into the wilderness, whatever shame she felt buried her along with the snow, Nathan found himself inexplicably determined to help her overcome it. When Olivia woke again, the cabin was filled with the rich aroma of coffee. She opened her eyes to find Nathan at the small table, carefully pouring the dark liquid into 2 tin cups. Daylight filtered through the cabin's single window, though the glass was obscured by frost and snow. She shifted slightly, and Nathan looked up at the sound. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle. "Or afternoon, rather. You've been sleeping a long while." Olivia pushed herself up on her elbows, wincing at the soreness in her muscles. "How long have I been here?" "About a day and a half now." Nathan brought one of the cups to her. "Think you can manage some coffee? It might help warm you from the inside." Olivia accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. She was suddenly acutely aware that she wasn't wearing her own clothes beneath the blanket wrapped around her. Heat that had nothing to do with the coffee rushed to her cheeks. Nathan seemed to read her thoughts. "I had to remove your wet clothes," he explained, his own cheeks coloring slightly. "You were in danger of freezing to death. I didn't. I was as respectful as possible given the circumstances." Olivia nodded stiffly. She knew he had done what was necessary to save her life, but the knowledge that this stranger had undressed her while she was unconscious was unsettling. "I understand," she said quietly. "Thank you for your discretion." An awkward silence fell between them as Olivia sipped her coffee. It was strong and bitter, but wonderfully warming. "The storm's still going," Nathan said, breaking the silence. "I managed to find some supplies in the cabin. Seems whoever owns this place left it stocked for emergencies. There's beans, flour, some salt pork. I can make us something more substantial than jerky now." "You've been very kind, Mr. Nathan," Olivia corrected herself. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you. No need for repayment. As I said, any decent man would have done the same." He hesitated. "Though I admit, I'm curious about what drove you out into that blizzard." Olivia stared into her coffee cup, debating how much to tell him. Nathan Xavier seemed honorable enough. He had saved her life, after all, and had been a gentleman despite their unusual circumstances. But she had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. "I was the schoolteacher in Silverton," she began cautiously. "I came west 2 years ago after my parents died. Teaching was all I knew, and the town needed someone to educate the children." Nathan listened quietly, not interrupting. Things were good at first. The people were kind, the children eager to learn. Olivia's voice grew harder. "Then Mr. Richard Thornton took an interest in me. He owns the largest silver mine in the area, practically owns the town itself. When I refused his advances, he didn't take it well." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Men like that aren't used to hearing no." "No, they're not." Olivia took another sip of coffee. "He began spreading rumors, said I was stealing from the school fund, that I was of low moral character. It didn't matter that there was no truth to any of it. People believed him because of who he is." "And so you ran," Nathan concluded. Olivia nodded. "2 nights ago, the sheriff came to my boarding house, said Mr. Thornton had proof of my theft, that I was to be arrested. I knew there was no proof. How could there be when I'd stolen nothing? But I also knew it wouldn't matter. His word against mine." Her voice trailed off. "So you fled into a blizzard rather than face a false accusation." Nathan shook his head. "That was mighty brave, if a bit foolhardy." "I didn't know the storm would be so bad," Olivia admitted. "By the time I realized it was too late to turn back, they were already searching for me." Nathan set his empty cup on the table. "Well, you're safe now, and once the weather clears, we'll figure out what to do next." Olivia looked at him sharply. I can't in good conscience leave you to fend for yourself in the wilderness, Miss Harrington." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "Unless you'd prefer I did." "No," she said softly. "I wouldn't, but I've already imposed on your kindness too much." "It's no imposition." Nathan stood and moved to the fireplace, adding another log to the flames. "Besides, I reckon we're stuck with each other until this storm passes anyway." Over the next 3 days, as the blizzard continued its assault on the mountains, Olivia and Nathan fell into an unexpectedly comfortable routine within the confines of the small cabin. Nathan insisted Olivia take the bed, while he made do with a bedroll on the floor near the fireplace. During the day, they shared the tasks of maintaining their shelter, Nathan venturing out to gather wood and check on Brutus, while Olivia managed their meager food supplies with careful rationing. When her clothes had finally dried, Olivia had reclaimed them with profound relief, though they were wrinkled and still bore the stains of her desperate flight through the forest. Nathan had tactfully averted his eyes while she dressed behind a blanket hung as a makeshift screen. The enforced proximity gradually eroded the initial awkwardness between them. In the evenings, as they sat before the fire, they shared stories, Nathan of his years driving cattle across the open plains, Olivia of her childhood in Pennsylvania and her training as a teacher. "I never planned to come west," she admitted one night, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. "I had a position at a ladies' seminary all arranged, but after my parents died of influenza within weeks of each other, I couldn't bear to stay." Every street, every building held memories that were too painful. Nathan nodded in understanding. Sometimes a fresh start is the only medicine for a broken heart. "What about you?" Olivia asked. "What brought you to this life?" Nathan's eyes grew distant, focused on something beyond the cabin walls. "Restlessness, I suppose. My father wanted me to take over the family store in St. Louis, but I couldn't imagine spending my days indoors, counting inventory and making polite conversation with customers." He smiled slightly. "I headed west when I was 18, signed on with a cattle drive as a wrangler. Been moving ever since." "Don't you ever want to settle somewhere?" Olivia wrapped her arms around her knees, drawn up beneath her chin. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Especially during winter when the wind cuts through you like a knife." His gaze met hers. "But I haven't found a place that feels like home yet, or a reason to stay in one place." There was something in his eyes that made Olivia's heart beat faster. She looked away, back to the fire. "I thought Silverton might be that place for me. I was wrong." "One bad experience doesn't mean you won't find a home elsewhere," Nathan said gently. "There are good people in this territory despite what you've endured." "Perhaps." Olivia wasn't convinced. Richard Thornton's reach was long, and she feared his accusations might follow her wherever she went in Colorado. On the morning of the fourth day, they woke to silence. The howling wind that had been their constant companion had finally ceased. Nathan opened the cabin door to find a world-transformed, pristine white snow stretching in all directions, glittering in the morning sunlight like diamonds scattered across the landscape. The sky above was a perfect, cloudless blue. "Storm's past," he announced, returning inside where Olivia was preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush. "We should be able to travel today." Olivia's hands stilled over the pot. Travel where? It was the question that had been hovering between them, unasked until now. Nathan ran a hand through his dark hair, longer now than he usually kept it. "Well, I still have a job waiting at the Anderson Ranch if the position hasn't been filled. It's about 2 days' ride from here, weather permitting." He hesitated. "You're welcome to come with me." "The Andersons are good people. Mrs. Anderson might have worked for you. They have 3 young children who could use some schooling." Hope and fear warred within Olivia. The prospect of employment and safety was tempting, but what if word has reached them about me, about the accusations? "Silverton's a fair distance from the Anderson place," Nathan said. "And they're not the type to put stock in rumors without evidence. But if you'd prefer to head somewhere else, I understand." Olivia considered her limited options. She had no money, no supplies, and nowhere to go. The logical choice was clear, even if it frightened her. "I'll come with you," she decided. "At least as far as the ranch. If the Andersons have no place for me, I'll move on." Nathan nodded, a smile warming his features. "Good. We'll leave as soon as we've eaten and packed up what supplies we can." Preparing to depart took less time than either of them expected. They had few possessions, and the cabin needed only to be left as they had found it, with a modest stack of firewood to replace what they'd used. Nathan insisted on leaving behind some of their remaining food and coffee as payment to the unknown owner for their shelter. The biggest challenge was how they would both travel. Nathan's horse Brutus was strong, but carrying 2 riders through deep snow would be difficult for him. "We'll take turns walking," Nathan decided as he saddled the horse. "And we'll move slower than I'd like, but we should reach the ranch by tomorrow evening if the weather holds." Olivia wrapped herself in the blanket Nathan had insisted she take from the cabin. Her dress and coat were insufficient protection against the winter cold, especially now that she knew what that cold was capable of. "I'm sorry to slow you down," she said as Nathan helped her mount Brutus. "Don't apologize. I'm in no great rush." He adjusted the stirrup for her, his hands strong and sure. "Besides, the company makes the journey more pleasant." The trail was challenging, with snow reaching past Nathan's knees in some places. He led Brutus by the reins, breaking a path through the drifts with his own body. After an hour, Olivia insisted they switch places, despite Nathan's protests. "You'll exhaust yourself," she argued, dismounting with his help. "And then what good will you be to either of us? I'm fully recovered now, thanks to your care. I can walk." Nathan conceded, though he kept a close eye on her as they continued. The day was clear but cold, their breath forming clouds before them. The mountains around them were magnificent in their winter garb, the pines heavy with snow, icicles hanging from rock faces like crystal daggers. They stopped at midday to rest and share a small meal of jerky and hardtack. Sitting on a fallen log that Nathan had cleared of snow, they ate in companionable silence, the vastness of the wilderness making conversation seem unnecessary. As they prepared to continue, Olivia caught Nathan looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "What is it?" she asked, brushing crumbs from her skirt. "Just thinking how remarkable you are," he said simply. "Most women who'd been through what you have would be broken by it. But here you are, trudging through snow, ready to face whatever comes next." Warmth bloomed in Olivia's chest that had nothing to do with the winter sun. "I'm not sure I deserve such praise. I was nearly dead when you found me." "Nearly," Nathan agreed, "but not quite. There's a strength in you, Olivia Harrington. Don't doubt it." The use of her first name sent a pleasant shiver through her that she tried to ignore. They had known each other for barely 5 days. It was foolish to feel anything beyond gratitude toward the man who had saved her life. And yet, as they continued their journey, Olivia found her gaze drawn to him again and again, the broad set of his shoulders, the determined line of his jaw, the kindness in his blue eyes when he looked at her. "Stop it," she chided herself. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a wandering cowboy who would likely ride off as soon as he delivered her to safety. She had learned her lesson about vulnerability in Silverton. As the afternoon waned, they came upon a narrow trail that wound along a ridge, offering a view of the valley below. In the distance, smoke rose from what appeared to be a small settlement, perhaps 3 or 4 buildings clustered together. "Willow Creek," Nathan said, following her gaze. "Not much more than a trading post and a saloon, but it's a place to spend the night if we can reach it before dark." They pushed on with renewed purpose. The prospect of a warm meal and a real bed was motivating, even if it meant interacting with strangers again. Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought. What if someone recognized her name? What if word of the accusations had spread this far? Nathan seemed to sense her apprehension. "You don't have to use your real name if you're worried," he said quietly as they descended toward the settlement. "And we can leave at first light." Olivia nodded gratefully. "Perhaps it would be safer if I were." She thought for a moment, Mrs. Xavier. "Just temporarily," she added quickly, feeling her cheeks grow hot. "People are less likely to question a married woman traveling with her husband." If the suggestion surprised Nathan, he didn't show it. "Makes sense," he agreed. "And it might prevent any unwanted attention from the type of men who frequent places like this." The sun was setting when they finally reached Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the snow. The settlement was indeed small, a general store with a post office, a saloon that advertised rooms for rent, a blacksmith shop, and a few scattered cabins. A handful of horses were tied outside the saloon, steam rising from their backs in the cold air. Nathan helped Olivia dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Remember, you're Mrs. Xavier now," he said softly. "Stay close to me." They secured Brutus at the hitching post, and Nathan gathered their few belongings before offering Olivia his arm. She took it, grateful for the solid warmth of him beside her as they entered the saloon. The interior was dimly lit and smoky, with a dozen or so patrons scattered at tables or standing at the bar. Conversations paused briefly as the newcomers entered, curious eyes taking in Nathan's trail-worn appearance and Olivia's disheveled state. Then, determining they were of little interest, the men returned to their drinks and conversations. Nathan guided Olivia to the bar, where a heavy-set man with an impressive mustache was polishing glasses with a questionably clean rag. "Evening," Nathan said. "My wife and I need a room for the night and 2 hot meals if you're serving." The barkeep eyed them appraisingly. "Room's 50 cents, meals are 25 cents each, stew and biscuits tonight." Nathan counted out the coins from a small leather pouch. "Much obliged. Been on the trail for days. Caught in that blizzard, were you?" The barkeep pocketed the money and reached for a key hanging on a hook behind him. "Room 3, top of the stairs. I'll have the girl bring up some hot water for washing, and your meals will be ready shortly." "Thank you," Olivia said, speaking for the first time since entering. She felt the weight of several gazes turning toward her at the sound of her voice. A woman was clearly a rarity in this establishment. Nathan's hand came to rest at the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive. "Come on, dear. Let's get settled." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single chair. A window overlooked the main street, now shadowed in the gathering dusk. Olivia stood awkwardly in the center of the room as Nathan set down their belongings. "I'll sleep on the floor," he said immediately, anticipating her concern. "It won't be the first time." Before Olivia could respond, a knock at the door announced the arrival of a young girl with a steaming pitcher of water and a basin. She set them on the washstand, bobbed a quick curtsy, and disappeared back down the hallway. Left alone again, Olivia gestured to the wash basin. "You should go first. You've done the harder work today." Nathan shook his head. "Ladies first, I insist." Olivia didn't have the energy to argue. The warm water was a luxury after days of melting snow for washing, and she savored the simple pleasure of cleaning her face and hands. When she finished, she found Nathan staring out the window, his back to her in a gesture of privacy. "Your turn," she said. As he washed, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the events that had brought her to this point. Less than a week ago, she had been a respected schoolteacher. Now she was a fugitive, pretending to be married to a man she barely knew, with no certain future ahead of her. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them, spilling down her freshly washed cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly, but Nathan turned in time to see. "Olivia," he crossed to her in 2 strides, kneeling before her. "What is it?" "Nothing. Everything." She shook her head, embarrassed by her breakdown. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a burden." "You're not a burden." His voice was firm. "You're a woman who's been dealt a terrible hand. You have every right to your tears." The simple kindness in his words only made her cry harder. Nathan hesitated, then gently took her hands in his. "Listen to me. What happened in Silverton was not your fault. The shame belongs to Thornton and those who believed his lies, not to you. Never to you." Olivia looked up at him through her tears, struck by the intensity in his blue eyes. "How can you be so certain? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. "I know you're brave and resilient. I know you care about doing what's right. You were willing to risk death rather than be falsely imprisoned. And I know that anyone who would spread lies about you is not worth your tears." His thumbs gently brushed away the moisture from her cheeks, the touch so tender it made her breath catch. For a moment, they remained frozen in that position, his hands cradling her face, her eyes locked with his. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of feeling neither was prepared to name. A knock at the door broke the spell. Nathan stood quickly, clearing his throat as he moved to answer it. A serving girl stood in the hallway with a tray bearing 2 bowls of stew, a plate of biscuits, and 2 mugs of coffee. "Your supper, sir," she said, offering him the tray. "Thank you." Nathan took it from her and closed the door with his foot. They ate in relative silence, both acutely aware of the moment that had passed between them. The stew was surprisingly good, rich with chunks of venison and root vegetables. After days of jerky and hardtack, it tasted like the finest cuisine either had experienced. When they finished, Nathan took the tray and set it outside their door. "I'll go check on Brutus before turning in," he said. "Lock the door behind me. I'll knock 3 times when I return." Olivia nodded, grateful for his concern for her safety. When he had gone, she moved to the window, watching as his tall figure crossed the snowy street to the hitching post where Brutus waited. The horse greeted Nathan with a nicker, butting his head against the cowboy's shoulder affectionately. As she observed Nathan checking the horse's legs and adjusting his blanket, Olivia was struck by how naturally caring he was toward his horse, toward her. He handled his responsibilities with a quiet confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin, a man who knew his purpose. It was an attractive quality, she had to admit. Perhaps too attractive, given her circumstances. When Nathan returned, Olivia had already changed into her nightgown behind the privacy screen and was sitting on the bed, brushing out her long dark hair. He averted his eyes, though the sight of her with her hair down and flowing over her shoulders made his heart beat a little faster. "Brutus is fine," he reported, removing his boots. "Weather looks clear for tomorrow." "That's good." Olivia set her brush aside. "Nathan, about earlier." "No need to explain," he said quickly. "You've been through a lot. Anyone would be overwhelmed." Olivia nodded, though that wasn't quite what she had intended to say. "Well, good night then." "Good night, Olivia." He stretched out on the floor beside the bed, using his saddle as a pillow and wrapping himself in his coat. Olivia blew out the lamp and lay down, pulling the blankets up to her chin. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. She could hear Nathan's steady breathing below, could sense his presence in the darkness. "Nathan," she whispered after a long silence. "Yes." His voice came immediately, telling her he was as awake as she was. "Thank you, not just for saving my life, but for seeing me. The real me, not what others have claimed I am." There was a pause, then his voice came again, soft in the darkness. "The real you is easy to see, Olivia. You shine too brightly to be hidden by lies." Warmth spread through her chest at his words. She didn't respond, afraid her voice would betray the emotion swelling within her. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the sound of his breathing lull her into the first peaceful sleep she'd had since fleeing Silverton. They departed Willow Creek at dawn, Olivia once again riding Brutus while Nathan walked alongside. The weather remained clear, though the temperature was bitterly cold. Their breath formed clouds before their faces as they traveled, following a trail that wound through pine forests and across open meadows blanketed in snow. "Tell me about the Andersons," Olivia requested as they stopped for a brief rest around midday. "What kind of people are they?" Nathan helped her dismount, his hand strong at her waist. "Good people. Joseph Anderson was a friend of my father's back in Missouri. He came west after the war, established a cattle ranch in the valley beyond those hills." He nodded toward the horizon. "His wife Emily is kind but no nonsense." Their children, 2 boys and a girl, are spirited but well-behaved. And you think they might have a place for me? Olivia couldn't keep the hope from her voice. I believe so. Last I heard, Emily was lamenting the lack of proper education for the children. The nearest school is in Riverdale, a good 10 miles away. Nathan offered her some jerky from their dwindling supplies. A teacher taking up residence at the ranch would be a godsend to them. They continued their journey through the afternoon, the trail gradually descending into a broad valley. As the sun began to set, they crested a ridge and saw before them a sprawling ranch, a large main house with smoke curling from the chimney, a barn, bunkhouse, and several corrals spread across the landscape. "The Circle, eh?" Nathan announced, a note of relief in his voice. "We made it." Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety as they approached. What if the Andersons turned her away? What if they had somehow heard the rumors from Silverton? What if— "Stop worrying," Nathan said, as if reading her thoughts. "They'll welcome you, trust me." As they drew closer to the main house, a dog began barking, alerting the occupants to their arrival. The front door opened and a man stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Behind him, a woman and 3 children peered curiously at the approaching travelers. "Who goes there?" The man called, his voice carrying across the yard. "Joseph Anderson," Nathan called back. "It's Nathan Xavier. I believe you're expecting me." The rifle lowered immediately and the man's stance relaxed. "Nathan, by God, we'd given you up for lost in that blizzard. Come in, come in." He turned to his family. "Emily, it's Nathan Xavier, Tom's boy from St. Louis." Nathan led Brutus into the yard, helping Olivia dismount one final time. She stood nervously beside him as the Anderson family descended from the porch to greet them. Joseph Anderson was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a beard streaked with gray. His wife, Emily, was petite but sturdy-looking, her brown hair pulled back in a practical bun. The children, 2 boys who appeared to be around 12 and 10, and a girl of perhaps 7, crowded around, staring with undisguised curiosity at the newcomers. "Nathan, my boy." Joseph clapped Nathan on the shoulder. "We feared the worst when you didn't arrive before the storm. And who's this?" His gaze shifted to Olivia. "This is Miss Olivia Harrington," Nathan said, emphasizing her proper title. "She was caught in the blizzard as well. I found her in the mountains and brought her to safety." Emily Anderson stepped forward, her kind eyes taking in Olivia's disheveled appearance. "You poor dear, you must be exhausted. Come inside where it's warm." Joseph nodded. "Michael, take Nathan's horse to the barn and see that he's properly cared for," he instructed the older boy. "Thomas, help your brother. Sarah, run ahead and tell Maggie to set 2 more places for supper." The children scurried to obey as Joseph led the way to the house, with Emily taking Olivia's arm in a motherly gesture that nearly brought tears to her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had shown her such simple kindness. The interior of the Anderson home was warm and inviting, with well-worn furniture and colorful quilts. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with a dining table set for the evening meal nearby. Delicious smells wafted from the kitchen, where a middle-aged woman, presumably Maggie, could be seen stirring something on the stove. "Sit, sit," Emily urged, guiding Olivia to a chair near the fire. "You're half frozen, I can tell. Maggie will bring tea in a moment." She turned to Nathan. "Now, tell us how you found this young lady and what brings her to our door." Nathan glanced at Olivia, silently asking her permission. When she nodded, he told their story, finding her nearly buried in the snow, taking shelter in the abandoned cabin during the storm, and their journey to the ranch. He tactfully omitted the reasons for Olivia's flight from Silverton, leaving that for her to share if and when she chose to. As he spoke, Maggie brought tea and placed a blanket around Olivia's shoulders. The warmth of both was deeply welcome after the long day's travel. "And you say you're a schoolteacher, Miss Harrington?" Emily asked when Nathan had finished. "Yes, madam. I taught in Silverton for nearly 2 years." Olivia wrapped her hands around the teacup, drawing comfort from its warmth. Emily and Joseph exchanged a look that seemed filled with meaning. "Well," Emily said, "it seems Providence has sent you to us. We've been praying for a teacher for our children. The nearest school is too far for daily travel, especially in winter." Hope bloomed in Olivia's chest. "Are you saying—" "We would be honored if you would consider staying with us and teaching our children," Joseph said. "We can offer room and board plus a modest salary." I don't know what to say." Olivia looked to Nathan, who was watching her with a smile that warmed her more than the fire or tea ever could. "Say yes," he suggested softly. "Yes," Olivia agreed, turning back to the Andersons. "Yes, I would be delighted to accept your offer." Emily beamed. "Wonderful. The children will be thrilled, and of course we'll need to get you proper winter clothing and supplies for teaching. We can ride into Riverdale next week for what you'll need." Supper that evening was a joyful affair. The Anderson children peppered Olivia with questions about what they would learn, while Joseph discussed ranch business with Nathan. It was clear that Nathan's position was secure, as well Joseph had been holding the job of foreman open for him, having promised it to Nathan's father months earlier. After the meal, when the children had been sent to bed and Maggie had retired to her quarters, the adults sat around the fire with coffee. It was then that Olivia decided to be fully honest with her new employers, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. "There's something you should know about me," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I didn't leave Silverton voluntarily." She told them everything: Richard Thornton's unwanted advances, his vengeful lies when rejected, the accusations of theft, and her desperate flight to avoid unjust imprisonment. As she spoke, Nathan moved to sit beside her, his presence a silent source of strength. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Olivia held her breath, waiting for the judgment that had driven her from Silverton. Joseph was the first to speak. "Miss Harrington, in my experience, a person who admits to their troubles openly, as you have done, is generally telling the truth." He exchanged a glance with his wife. "We appreciate your honesty, and it changes nothing about our offer." Emily nodded in agreement. "Richard Thornton's reputation is known beyond Silverton, my dear. You're not the first woman he has harassed, though perhaps the first brave enough to resist him so completely." Relief washed over Olivia like a wave. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." Later that evening, Olivia was shown to a small but comfortable bedroom that would be hers. Emily provided a nightgown and promised that tomorrow they would find more suitable clothing for her from among Emily's own things, until they could visit the general store in Riverdale. Left alone, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the turn her fortunes had taken. Just a week ago, she had been fleeing for her life, certain that her reputation and career were destroyed forever. Now she had a new position, a safe place to live, and people who believed in her innocence. And then there was Nathan. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, Nathan stood in the hallway, looking somewhat hesitant. "I wanted to make sure you were settling in all right," he said. "Yes, the Andersons have been incredibly kind." Olivia smiled. "You were right about them," Nathan nodded. "They're good people. You'll be safe here." An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much Olivia wanted to say, but she wasn't sure how to begin. Would Nathan stay at the ranch as foreman, or would his restless nature soon drive him back to the trail? And what of the connection that had grown between them during their days together? "Well," Nathan finally said, "I should let you rest. It's been a long journey." "Nathan," Olivia said quickly before he could turn away, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You saved my life in more ways than one." His blue eyes held hers, warm with an emotion she dared not name. "You don't need to thank me, Olivia. Finding you, it was." He seemed to struggle for words. "It was meant to be, I think." "Meant to be," she echoed softly. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was brief but electric. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Nathan." As she closed the door behind him, Olivia pressed her fingers to the spot where his had touched her face. "Meant to be." The words echoed in her mind as she prepared for bed, carrying with them a promise she was almost afraid to acknowledge. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Olivia's life. She settled into life at the Circle, a ranch with surprising ease, establishing a schoolroom in a corner of the main house and developing a curriculum for the Anderson children. They proved to be eager students, particularly young Sarah, who hung on Olivia's every word. True to their word, the Andersons took Olivia to Riverdale to purchase clothing and teaching supplies. The small town was a welcome change from Silverton. No one knew her here, and she was introduced simply as the Andersons' new teacher. The weight of shame that had burdened her began to lift as she established a new identity untainted by Thornton's lies. Nathan, too, settled into his role as foreman of the ranch. He moved into the small cabin reserved for that position, a short walk from the main house. His days were filled with the responsibilities of running the ranch, managing the hands, checking the cattle, maintaining equipment, and planning for the spring calving season. Despite their busy schedules, Nathan and Olivia found moments to spend together. Sometimes he would join her evening lessons with the children, listening as she read aloud from books of poetry or adventure stories. Other times, they would take walks around the ranch property, their conversations flowing easily from topics trivial to profound. It was during one such walk, with the February sun casting long shadows across the snow, that Nathan first took her hand in his. The gesture was so natural, so right, that neither of them commented on it. They simply continued their discussion about the spring planting, their gloved fingers intertwined as if they had always walked this way. By March, when the first signs of spring began to emerge in the valley, the nature of their relationship was obvious to everyone at the Circle A. The children giggled when Nathan came to the house for supper, which was increasingly frequent. Emily Anderson would smile knowingly when she caught them sitting close together by the fire in the evenings. Even Joseph made the occasional comment about young love that caused both Nathan and Olivia to blush. Yet neither had spoken openly of their feelings. It was as if they were both afraid to put into words what was growing between them, fearful that naming it might somehow break the spell. The catalyst came on an unseasonably warm day in late March. Nathan had suggested they ride to a nearby ridge that offered a view of the entire valley. Olivia, now much more comfortable on horseback after weeks of lessons from Nathan, readily agreed. They packed a simple picnic and set off after her morning lessons were complete, riding side by side through meadows where the first wildflowers were beginning to appear. The easy conversation that had become their hallmark flowed between them, punctuated by comfortable silences. At the ridge, they dismounted and spread a blanket on a patch of dry ground. The view was spectacular, the valley stretching below them, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance, the mountains rising majestically on the horizon. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, accepting the sandwich Nathan offered her. "I can see why you love it here." Nathan looked at her rather than the view. "There are many reasons to love it here." The weight of his words hung between them. Olivia met his gaze, her heart beating faster at what she saw in his blue eyes. "Nathan," she began, setting aside her untouched sandwich. "I've been thinking about what you said that night at the Andersons when I first arrived, about finding me being meant to be." He nodded, his expression serious. "I meant it. I know." Olivia took a deep breath. "I've come to believe it too. What are the chances that you would be passing through that exact part of the mountains at that exact moment, that you would spot me beneath the snow before it was too late?" "Providence," Nathan suggested, "or fate if you prefer. Either way, it seems we were destined to meet." Olivia looked down at her hands, suddenly shy. "And I've come to care for you, Nathan, more than I ever expected to care for anyone again after what happened in Silverton." Nathan reached out, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, from the moment I found you in that snow, something changed in me. I've spent years wandering, never feeling settled anywhere. But with you, I feel like I've found what I've been searching for without even knowing it." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you," Nathan said simply. "I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the way you've embraced this new life. I love watching you with the children. I love everything about you." A tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much that it frightens me sometimes." Nathan reached up to brush away her tear, his touch tender. "What frightens you? That it can't last. That the past will catch up with me, that you'll grow restless again and leave." She looked away. "I couldn't bear it if you left." "Olivia, look at me." Nathan waited until she met his eyes again. "I'm not going anywhere. The restlessness that drove me for years, it's gone. Being with you here at the circle, this is where I belong. Where we belong if you'll have me." "If I'll have you," Olivia repeated, a smile breaking through her tears. "Marry me," Nathan said, the words more a statement than a question. "Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you that you never need to feel shame or fear again." Joy, pure and powerful, surged through Olivia. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Nathan Xavier, I will marry you." He pulled her to him then, his lips finding hers in their first kiss. It was gentle at first, then deepening as Olivia responded with all the love that had been building in her heart. When they finally parted, both were breathless and smiling. "I should have done that weeks ago," Nathan murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "We have a lifetime for more," Olivia promised. They returned to the ranch hand in hand, their happiness evident to anyone who saw them. The Andersons were delighted by the news of their engagement, Emily immediately beginning to plan a spring wedding. "Nothing elaborate," Olivia insisted. "Just family and the ranch hands. That's all we need." Joseph clapped Nathan on the shoulder. "I knew the moment I saw you two together that this was coming. Best foreman I ever had, and now he'll be family too." The wedding took place in early May when the valley was carpeted in wildflowers. Emily and Maggie transformed the ranch yard into a festive space, with ribbons and flowers adorning every available surface. The minister rode out from Riverdale to perform the ceremony, and neighbors from miles around came to celebrate. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Emily had helped her make, with wildflowers woven into her dark hair. Nathan, unrecognizable in clean, pressed clothes, waited for her beneath an arch of blossoming branches, his face lighting up at the sight of her. As they exchanged vows before family, friends, and the magnificent backdrop of the mountains, Olivia felt the last vestiges of shame melt away. Here, with Nathan's hand warm in hers and love shining in his eyes, she was not the disgraced schoolteacher who had fled Silverton. She was simply Olivia Xavier, beloved wife, respected teacher, and woman of strength who had survived the darkest winter of her life to find a spring more beautiful than she could have imagined. That evening, as they stood together on the porch of the foreman's cabin that would now be their home, Nathan wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder as they gazed at the stars. "Happy?" he asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," Olivia answered truthfully. "When I ran from Silverton that night, I thought my life was over. I never imagined I would find such happiness." Nathan turned her in his arms to face him. "You buried those fears and that shame in the snow where I found you," he said, "and they can stay buried. This is where our story begins." Olivia rose on tiptoes to kiss him, her heart full to bursting. "Our story," she agreed, "and it's a beautiful one." 5 years later, on a crisp autumn day, Nathan and Olivia Xavier stood on the porch of their new home, watching their 3-year-old daughter Eleanor chase butterflies in the yard. Behind them, the ranch house they had built with their own hands stood proud against the mountain backdrop, a testament to the life they had created together. The circle had prospered under Nathan's management, and 2 years earlier, Joseph Anderson had offered to make him a partner in the ranch. With their combined savings and Nathan's share of the profits, they had built this house on a corner of the property close enough to the main ranch for Nathan's work and Olivia's continued teaching of the Anderson children, but with enough privacy to feel like their own domain. "Mama, look," Eleanor called, her dark curls bouncing as she pointed to a particularly vibrant butterfly. "Blue one." "I see it, sweetheart," Olivia called back, smiling at their daughter's enthusiasm. Eleanor had Nathan's blue eyes and Olivia's dark hair, a perfect blend of them both. Nathan's arm tightened around her waist. "She's getting so big," he observed. "Seems like yesterday she was just a baby." "Time flies when you're happy," Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. Her free hand rested on her belly, where their second child had just begun to make its presence known. They hadn't told anyone yet, saving the news as a special surprise for the family dinner that weekend. "Are you happy, Mrs. Xavier?" Nathan asked, though he knew the answer. It was a question he asked often, as if still amazed by the life they had built together. "Completely," Olivia answered truthfully. "Every day with you and Eleanor is a gift, and soon there will be 4 of us to share in this happiness." Nathan's eyes widened as he processed her words. "Are you saying?" Olivia nodded, her smile radiant. "Early spring, the doctor thinks." With a whoop of joy that startled Eleanor from her butterfly chase, Nathan lifted Olivia off her feet, spinning her in a circle that made her laugh like a girl. "Another baby. Oh, Olivia, that's wonderful news." Setting her gently back on her feet, Nathan knelt to gather Eleanor into his arms as she ran to see what the commotion was about. "What do you think, Ellie? Would you like a baby brother or sister?" The little girl considered this with all the seriousness a 3-year-old could muster. "A sister," she decided firmly. "For tea parties." Nathan and Olivia exchanged amused glances over their daughter's head. "We'll see what God sends us," Olivia said diplomatically. As they stood together on the porch, the small family wrapped in each other's embrace, Olivia thought back to that terrible night when she had fled into the blizzard, certain that her life was over. How wrong she had been. That flight, that burial in snow and shame, had not been an ending but a beginning, the first step on a journey that had led her to Nathan, to Eleanor, to this home, to the new life growing within her. "Penny for your thoughts," Nathan said, noticing her contemplative expression. Olivia smiled up at him, her heart full. "I was just thinking about how sometimes what seems like the worst moment of your life can actually be the beginning of the best part." Nathan nodded in understanding. "The night I found you. Yes, I thought I was dying that night. Instead, I was being reborn." She reached up to touch his beloved face. "You dug me out of more than just snow, Nathan Xavier. You rescued my heart, my hope, my future. And you gave me a home," he replied, kissing her softly. "Something I never knew I needed until I found you." Eleanor squirmed between them, demanding attention in the way of all children. They laughed, including her in their embrace, the perfect circle of their family complete yet expanding, rooted in love that had begun in the most unlikely of circumstances. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. The shame that had once threatened to bury her was long gone, replaced by pride in the woman, wife, and mother she had become. The snow that had nearly claimed her life had instead led her to a love deeper and truer than she had ever imagined possible. And Nathan, her beloved cowboy who had whispered those fateful words, "You're not dying tonight," had been right in ways neither of them could have foreseen. She hadn't died that night. Instead, surrounded by the family they had created, Olivia Xavier had never felt more alive.